So next, Ryan Reynolds, representing Gap Filler. Ryan, good morning. Good to see you. Thanks for joining us.
Hello. Kia ora koutou. Thank you for the opportunity. I just want to acknowledge my close colleagues, Kai from the Green Lab and Hugh from Life in Vacant Spaces, who are here for moral support. I want to start by saying we work for the city as a whole, as dictated by our trust deed. We do not work for the benefit of any particular neighborhood or demographic or group of businesses or cause, and are committed, legally committed, to the holistic revitalization of Christchurch in accordance with our charitable purposes. It's as true now as we face a long-term social and economic recovery from the pandemic as it was when we were first created following the September 2010 earthquake. Gap Filler is incredibly prolific, with 15 active projects and installations right now across 9 sites in the central city, and 2 major new projects to be delivered by the end of July, spread across an additional 7 sites. I've included in our submission a few paragraphs about what placemaking is, and what I think is a useful diagram from the founders of placemaking, the US advocacy group PPS. As a side note, we regularly participate in international placemaking forums alongside the likes of PPS and have been invited to give keynotes and workshops at PPS events on 3 continents. So we're very much leaders here in Christchurch in the global network developing the theory and practice of placemaking. This PPS diagram shows that placemaking is quite a broad field and a holistic approach that requires leadership from lots of different agencies and sectors. I don't have time to go into it all, but the blue quadrant around transportation will largely be led by Council and ECAN. The yellow quadrant around uses and activities requires participation from local businesses and business groups, agencies like Christchurch NZ, as well as those groups like Gap Filler, generating a diversity of free and inexpensive social activities. The red quadrant around street life, pride in place, diversity, and neighborliness is where community groups, residents associations, and placemaking agencies like Gap Filler really take a lead. Our work touches on all these areas with a firm anchor in the red sociability quadrant as dictated by our trust deed and the objectives of our council grant funding agreement. Now, placemaking is catching on in Christchurch and across New Zealand, in part because of our work here over the past decade. Development agencies and councils around the country have placemaking teams. The NZTA and Kainga Ora have embraced it, and lots of new placemaking groups are popping up. This is all positive. Clearly, it also brings an opportunity and a requirement to develop a more strategic approach as a city. Exactly this, developing placemaking strategies for cities and major developments, has been a key part of Gap Filler's work outside of Christchurch for the past several years. We've just started a brand new piece of work this month in Invercargill, where we are on the design team leading a process with the roading manager, planning manager, parks manager, heritage manager, the neighborhood retailers group, key central city developers, and a wide range of others to develop an overarching placemaking and activation strategy for the central city. This is what we do. We and our peers would relish the opportunity to play a similar strategic role here in Christchurch with a similar range of key stakeholders involved. We've been doing great work within quite serious constraints. With longer-term confirmed support and agency to lead a strategic planning process, we could do so very much more. In the longer term, we would like to work with Council to develop systems to enable more strategic placemaking outcomes. This might entail having just one governance body for our 3 organizations, having clearer and official relationships with lots of city agencies, not just one team within council, having multi-year funding agreements or service contracts in place of grants, and more. Working out the details will obviously take some time and care. So given all that, we implore you to continue the grant funding agreements for Gap Filler, Green Lab, and Life in Vacant Spaces for the coming financial year, and to include as one of the deliverables for this year's grant, or perhaps as a separate undertaking, to work closely with strategy and planning and other teams within Council, Christchurch NZ, CCBA, and others to lead the development of a placemaking strategy for Christchurch over the next 6 months to feed into the long-term plan. Between our 3 organizations, we have delivered and facilitated more than 500 projects for the city of Christchurch. We have a shelf full of local, national, and international awards, have a decade of experience and strong working relationships, and have established Christchurch as a global mecca for placemaking. Please empower us to lead Christchurch's placemaking to the next level. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any questions? It's probably time for one question if there was. Tim.
So what's the difference between you guys and, say, Council planning teams?
Yeah, that's part of the reason, and given the CCBA submission and your question to Mike there, that's part of the reason why I included the PPS diagram as part of the submission, because the sort of work that the CCBA does, would be a small quadrant, a small portion of the yellow quadrant of that graph. Our work is very much anchored in sociability, and between us, we've already worked out a strategy where Gap Filler takes a different sort of approach to Green Lab. We're very much focused on the central city, have a more propositional and kind of quirky creative approach. Green Lab has been doing really deep community work with marginalized communities, mostly in the suburb. So between us, as best as we can, we've worked out strategic ways of getting the best bang for buck. But yeah, if we could work closely with multiple agencies across the city, I think we could develop a really strong placemaking strategy for the whole city.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you very much indeed for the submission, for taking the time to come along and speak with us this morning. Thanks to you and your partner organisations for the work that you've done, the work you're doing, and obviously the work that you're planning to do. Thanks very much indeed. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.